Welcome to the Fit Dad Club podcast. My name is Travis Jones. I'm here with Jason Barrett, and this is episode 2, where we talk all things fat loss and how to achieve it and how to get that body transformation that you are after. Hey, Jace, how are we doing today, buddy?
Doing really good. Excited to be sharing some of the hacks and the tips for everyone to get the transformation that they're looking for, because there's a lot of BS information out there and there's a lot of unnecessary convolution, I'd say.
Mate, I completely agree. And that's probably one of the biggest reasons why people don't achieve their results, because of all the myths that surround it, or the methods that surround it, which are overcomplicating things for people and also misguiding them. And I think if we have this constant search for this new evolved way of losing fat, when really there's some simple principles that if we just nail consistently, we achieve the results we're after. And I think in anything in life, the boring stuff works. But the boring stuff doesn't sell new books, and that is the actual problem. Today, we're going to talk about, what type of diets work the best, how we get our training in, what are macros, how to get them right, alcohol and fat loss. We're going to talk about meal timing. We're going to talk about sleep, maybe a little bit of stress, and also, common myths and where people fail. So I think that is a big podcast for us, and hopefully you walk away today with some education and some simplification on how to achieve that body that you are after. And to kick it off, go. Yeah, go.
Last week we talked about taking into account what your situation is, your context, and what you're trying to achieve. So that's really the lens that you've got to look through this next podcast, the next episode, and all the rest of the podcast with, is what is my goal and what is my situation? Because not everything we're going to say is going to be relevant for every single person, but we're dads. We're going to focus on what are the constraints of fatherhood, of having little ones, and what are the common things that people in that situation struggle with. And as a result, what do we need to do in order to get the results? So always have in the back of your mind, what do I need to be doing? What are the things that are relevant for me? And just take those on board. And especially with the rest of the industry, just fucking ignore them. Because if some 23-year-old personal trainer is telling you you've got to spend 2 hours in the gym every other day, and you've got to do, an hour and a half of cardio on the days you're not in the gym, don't buy it. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
I completely agree, mate. And I think, just do you. And I think everything we do share today, you can take snippets of it and apply to your life, given your constraints, because every single one of us has different constraints as dads. Some are shift workers. Some have 7 kids. I do not have 7 kids. I actually probably don't want 7 kids. I'm in my side of my life at the moment. I'm quite happy with my 2 boys and my life.
You got a basketball team.
Exactly. But I think when we're looking at it, team, any type of fat loss, okay, this is the first thing I want you to understand, is if you consume more calories, okay, if you consume more food than you burn, you will gain weight. If you consume fewer calories and less food than you burn on a daily basis, the calories you burn, you will lose weight. And that is the overarching principle. And some people will say, oh, calories don't matter. And some people will say calories do matter. Well, I'm going to give it to a nutshell. Calories matter most. Okay. It's as simple as that. If you eat fewer calories, you will start to lose weight. And, they've done countless experiments on this. So Mark Hobb, he was a professor at the Kansas State University. He literally ate for 10 weeks Doritos, Oreos, Twinkies, and a couple of protein shakes while maintaining an average calorie deficit of 800 calorie deficit a day. And in 2 months, he lost 27 pounds, or approximately about 12 kilos. So he wasn't even eating great food quality, okay, but his food quantity was in a calorie deficit, which allowed him to lose that 12 kilos in 2 months. So, do calories matter most? Yes, they do. But should we eating like Twinkies and Maccas and Doritos to achieve that? Well, it's probably not going to be the healthiest version or the most sustainable version. And I think that's the biggest thing, that we need to understand calories. And I think if there's one thing, and we're going to be doing a couple of things for the rest of your life, but there's one thing that we do as humans until we die is eat. So we need to make sure that we have a little bit of an understanding around nutrition. We have to increase our nutrition IQ. What is a chicken breast, and, how much protein is in that, and how much should I be eating? Because the higher our nutrition IQ, and the more we understand about nutrition, the easier it is for us to achieve the ideal body composition and also hold it for the rest of our lives. So I think that every single one of us, if we're looking to perform optimally as a human and have high energy and feel fantastic and have good body composition, that's understanding nutrition is something that most people should delve into and have at least a good amount of knowledge so they can, factor in how they can live their life efficiently.
Yeah, agree. Because the schools aren't, they'll take for 2 weeks and they'll go through a little food pyramid and, maybe you'll do a little bit of a diagram or whatever, right? But a lot of the guidelines that you're going to get are from the government, and the government aren't going to be telling you, hey, what's optimal for body composition and energy. They tell you what is the minimum so that you don't die. Like, what is the basics that you absolutely need when it comes to vitamins, when it comes to intakes of various sources, because the body composition and the bodybuilding industry specifically, and they're more experts when it comes to changing body composition, losing fat, gaining muscle in the most effective ways. Their research is usually far ahead of any of the general research that the government will take on board when it comes to recommendations, because they obviously want to be super duper safe and make sure they don't say anything that could possibly cause any issues to anyone, because then the government will get thrown into shit and everyone will blame them for it. So they really try and keep it safe. They're not designed for you to thrive, they're designed for you to survive. So if you don't take responsibility for your own nutrition knowledge, and you don't take responsibility for saying, hey, I know I don't understand this stuff, sometimes it can be a little bit of a blow to the ego, being like, well, look, I've eaten 3 square meals a day for the last 30, 40 years of my life, and I haven't bothered to look into understanding nutrition. Maybe I feel like a bit of a dunce. There's all these people that know all this stuff more than me, but it's like the best time to start is now. Well, the best time to start was 20 years ago. The second best time to start is right now. So even if you've got no knowledge, no prior information at all, this podcast will obviously be a great first step. But then beyond that, look into and start to understand, well, what is in the food that I'm eating? What is in nutrition? What does nutrition actually mean? What are good foods? What are bad foods? Is that even a thing? And then you'll have a tool in your tool belt that you can use forever, right? For the rest of your life, to continue to maintain your results, which is the biggest thing that people fail at. Heaps of people lose fat. Not very many people keep it off.
I think that's the biggest problem. I think when we look at this, it's understanding, okay, how many calories do we burn on a daily basis and how many calories do we consume? We're not going to go too much into the science today as far as the exact equation to do it. We can if we want to, but I don't want to try and bore anyone. I want to make sure that you stay engaged and involved in this. But I think the biggest thing is, we all burn a certain amount of calories on a daily basis, and that's called our total daily energy expenditure. And breaking up inside our total daily energy expenditure, we have our basal metabolic rate. So there is amount of calories we burn on a daily basis, basically at rest, just to survive. And that's about 65% of our total calories. Above that, we have our thermically effective food. So we increase our the daily calorie burn through digestion. So protein has a higher thermic effective food than carbohydrates or fats, which is why we tend to lean to higher protein-based diets when we're in a fat loss phase. That's about 10% of our calorie burn on a daily basis. On top of that, we have our NEAT activity, which is our non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Going against the grain a little bit, I throw the steps into that so we can have a little bit of planned activity, increase our NEAT. That can be 5 to 15% of our total calorie burn. So if we're not moving at all and we're sitting down, we're not fidgeting, then it's going to be more on the 5%. And if we've got more of an active job and we're a fidgeter and we get moving more often, well, it's going to be upwards of that 15%. On top of that, we have our exercise activity thermogenesis, which is about 6%. So if you think you can out-train a bad diet, well, 6% of your daily calorie burn is from exercise. So we really can't do that. And, people are like looking at their watches, I burn these calories, I can eat more food. That is not how it works. I do not want you to start eating more food because MyFitnessPal told you you can eat more food now. I want you to set your calories. I want you to eat those calories. If you moved a little bit more, happy days, you're going to lose fat faster. So if we look at that sort of total daily energy expenditure, we have our metabolic rate, we have our thermic effective food, we have our NEAT activity, we have our exercise activity thermogenesis, and that sort of all pulls in together to be how many calories you're burning on a daily basis. Now, you can look at, and then based on your activity levels, it's like 1.2, 1.3, or 1.4, depends on how active you are throughout the day. Now, as a base level, you can go to tdee.net and you can work out your calories, or you can just go, body weight in pounds times, 10 to 11, and that's going to put you on a pretty aggressive calorie deficit. And you're going to start losing weight. Now, it's all just a bit of a not a guess, but when we're looking at the start, those first calories we don't know where your metabolic rate is actually sitting. We don't know your prior exercise activity. We don't know how much lean muscle mass you are having. So your metabolic rate can be up or down. What we have to look at is over the first 7 to 14 days, how much weight you're losing on that calorie deficit over those assigned calories. And then we can modify from there, because we want to make sure that we are in a calorie deficit. And to lose a kilo of fat requires a deficit of about 7,700 calories. So if we look at your total daily energy expenditure and we're pushing out, say, 2,700 calories a day, and that's what you're burning, okay, then we're looking at consuming 17 to 1,800 calories on a daily basis, then you're going to be losing around a kilo of fat a week. Okay, a kilo of weight a week, sorry, not fat. And then if we do that consistently, we'll keep losing a kilo a week, and that's essentially how we do it. But one, we want to know how much we're burning. Two, we want to know how much we're eating or consuming, because what we measure matters, and what we can measure, we can actually manage as well. I think that is one of the biggest things that, like, if we don't want to look at it just like a bank account, because, you know, we can manage our finances if we look at our bank account. It's just a number. If we look at our weight or calories we're consuming, we can then manage that, and we can look at that as far as how it affects the scale and our weight going down the right direction as well.
100%. If you don't have the awareness of how much you're burning, but then also how much you're intaking. And a lot of people will do a little bit more movement, but if you're not actively tracking it, unconsciously, you're actively going to move more. There's research that shows that you will increase your level of fidgeting, your level of activity, the more you eat. Right. So if you eat more, you'll tend to move more. If you eat less, you'll tend to move less. And if you don't have a tracking in balance of those, so if you move a little bit more, you might naturally start to eat a little bit more because you're burning all this extra energy. And as a result, you're like, well, I'm going on this gym program, I'm doing all these steps, but I'm not getting anywhere. Yeah, because you're not tracking your food and you're not tracking your weight. So you don't have any idea of whether or not you're in the right place. You can only make adjustments week by week with information. And the more information that you have, the better the adjustments are that you can make. And the more knowledge that you have around why those numbers may be looking the way that they are, that allows you to make really empowered choices with facts and with data, rather than emotionally, oh, my jeans didn't feel too good today, or, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure I only ate around this much approximately. And it's like, yeah, you didn't count the half pack of Oreos that you snacked on throughout the day that undid all your hard work, right? So it's not about beating yourself up for eating food, but it's just about, you've got to have awareness, right? You've got to bring awareness to where you're at right now and the actions that you're taking. And that's where you want to make adjustments from. Don't just start completely brand new on something else, because you won't be able to adapt that to your lifestyle. You need to start making little adjustments in with your lifestyle as to what your context and your goals will fit. So if you currently eat out 7 times a week, right? Rather than say, I'm going to meal prep every single meal and I'm never going to eat out again. It's like, well, maybe we just change where you're eating out and we bring it down to 3 or 4 times a week. And then we start, we make those little adjustments, and then we can start to understand, first of all, hey, how many calories is in a Big Mac and a large fries? Like, fuck, maybe that's not worth it. You could have a feast for that calories, right? So it's all about making those trade-offs, and understanding food and understanding where you're at and your results is the first step to understanding how to make those smart trade-offs that will keep you going for a longer time.
Mate, I completely agree. And I think if you can understand the analogy of losing weight, or, essentially tracking your calories and looking at the result from that, is just similar to, saving for a house or saving for a holiday. So if, in 6 months time or 12 months time, you want to go on a holiday, you want to save, $5,000, we have to save, $100 a week. Okay. And we have a certain income and we have a certain amount of expenses. We need to save $100 a week. And that means every single week we're going to save that $100. And at the end of the year, we save the $5,000. We can break that down into a daily expenditure. So how much can I spend each week based on an income to save that $100? And, if I'm saving, what that work out to be about $15 a day, every single day. And it's like, okay, well, if I don't save $15 on Monday and I spend, and I only save $10, well, I can save a little bit more on Tuesday. I can still stay within my weekly calorie or weekly budget as far as savings for my money, and I still get to my holiday. It's the same thing when we look at our calories. If we're burning a certain amount of calories and we're spending less, okay, so we're creating that calorie deficit, and then every single week we lose that kilo and we keep going. And it's the same thing. Just spend the amount of calories that is in the deficit, which will achieve the result. And then when we look at it, some people are like, oh, but that seems hard. I have to, manage and measure and track things. And we'll talk about a couple of hacks to do that. Or, I tried this keto thing. Isn't keto the way? We don't have to manage anything or measure anything. Or what about carnivore? I can just eat steaks. It's like, there is so many methods. If you Google diets out there, there'll be probably a million responses, but there is keto, there's carnivore, there's paleo, there's vegan, there's low carb, there's if it fits your macros. There's all these methods to achieve the result that is the principle, which is a calorie deficit. Because all these methods are doing, keto will cut out carbs, or low carb will cut out carbs. Paleo cuts out all refined food. When we're looking at, vegan or vegetarian, we're cutting out animal sources of protein. We're looking at carnivore. Again, we're cutting out carbs. We're cutting out whole macronutrient groups. And if we cut out macronutrient group, what that will do is that will automatically decrease the amount of calories we're eating on a daily basis, which shifts you into a calorie deficit. I think what we need to do is we need to choose a method that we can stick to the longest. There's the man shake diet. Can you stick to the man shake for the rest of your life? If not, you're putting a Band-Aid over the issue. And then when you take that Band-Aid off, all of a sudden you start to gain weight. So instead, we need to go, okay, I need to get my education around calories. I need to get my education around food. I need to increase this nutrition IQ. So then once I lose weight, I can move into more of an intuitive eating process. Not at the start, but once we understand, because I can eyeball food, I can understand calories, I can look at my weight and I understand if I've gone up a little bit, I know exactly what to do to bring it back down. And we tend to look at a bit more of a flexible dieting approach when we look at the method we use to achieve the principle of the calorie deficit. So, 80% of our foods should be whole foods. They should be nourishing. They should, make sure we're hitting our protein. And we'll talk about that as well. And then 20% can allow for flexibility. Have the cookies or have the ice cream or have the beer, and you're still having the flexibility, because if you can have the pizza once a week, or if you can have the burger, or if you can have some beers and you can still be inside your calorie deficit, or you're going to be able to stay on the diet for longer. And it's not really a diet anymore. It's a way of life. And it's a way of eating. And then sometimes if you wanted to lose more fat, well, you're going to be eating slightly less calories. And sometimes you want to maintain your weight, you'll be eating slightly more calories. But the method you do this, the method you maintain weight or lose weight or gain weight, is all the same as just making sure we're hitting our calories and we're making sure it's a flexible diet where we enjoy the process and we actually never want to get off the process as well.
Yeah. To put this into a bit of a realistic context, I recently, it was just before New Year's, ended up injuring my back a little bit, being a little bit silly. Now I'm doing some rehab for it. But for about 4 weeks, I wasn't able to go to the gym. For probably 3 of those 4 weeks, I was hitting, I'd say, less than 2,000 steps a day in terms of my daily activity. I would be pivoting between like being able to stand up, go for like 5 minutes of a walk, and then lying down on the couch because I couldn't, like, sitting for too long would just make it aggravated. So my activity level went so far down, and the way that I wasn't blowing out. I've maintained pretty much my weight the entire way through. I'm pretty much at the exact same weight as I was just before that injury, even though I haven't been going to the gym. How? Just because I understood the principles, and I've been doing this for so long now, I understand the principle of, all right, well, I'm not going to eat more food, or I'm going to make sure I'm just aware of my food intake because I'm not really moving much. So if I just maintain the amount of food that I'm on, if I was in a deficit before, I'll probably just be at maintenance now, which is probably what I want to aim for. So based on that, the fact that I had the nutrition knowledge, I was able to maintain weight when a lot of people, when they get injured or they're not able to go to the gym or they're not able to go all in, what they'll do is they'll throw the baby out with the bathwater and they'll stop doing anything at all. But if you have the ability to educate yourself, and as we said before, you take the responsibility upon yourself to educate yourself and to take this step, then you can make those adjustments and you can, again, maintain your results for a much longer period of time than people who just blindly follow a plan like a keto or a carnivore or a vegan just because it cuts out all these things. But then you don't know how to live your life. You don't know how to make adjustments when shit hits the fan. And, quite literally, as dads, shit will hit the fan sometimes. It will hit everything, right? And you'll be scrubbing all over the place. That's another story for another day. But the principle is to understand and to learn and to educate yourself on nutrition so that you can make the best decisions possible, rather than putting your life and your health in someone else's hands to say, hey, write me a plan, tell me what to do, and I'll just do that. And then I won't have to think about it myself, because then that's just being lazy.
Mate, I completely agree. And I think when people ask us, hey, how much are you eating? What are you eating? Like everyone's nutrition is going to be different. You know, what I eat, what you eat, what someone else eats, we're different people. We have different activity levels and we have different amounts of muscle mass. So we need to understand how many calories you as the listener should be eating. And like I said, like a very, very simple, formula could be body weight in pounds times 11. So if you're 100 kilos, that means you're 220 pounds, which means you'll be eating somewhere about 2,300, 2,400 calories, somewhere around that. And you can literally start tracking that each day for the next 7 days. And then go, okay, what's my weight on the daily basis? And am I decreasing my weight? Am I losing approximately a kilo a week? And if yes, okay, stay at that. If not, you can take a small adjustment. So take an extra 100 calories or 200 calories off the top and then track again for the next 7 days. Am I in that calorie deficit? Yes. Well, fantastic. Let's maintain that until we have a bit of a plateau. So I don't want you to get too overwhelmed, okay, as far as how many calories I should be eating, but, you know, pick a number. It can be the naive process, which is I just explained then. But the biggest thing is, you know, we need to get into action fast rather than going, I need to get the perfect diet. I need to read 17 books. Well, no, you just need to start tracking your food. I think that's the biggest thing. We need to start tracking our food. We need to start eating better because when we're looking at it, guys, you know, nothing's ever going to be perfect. You're never going to have the right diet. But if you get into action, then we can already start making iterations within 7 days, within 14 days to have you on the correct deficit to be losing. I like to see my guys losing at least 1% of total body weight per week. So if you're 100 kilos, you're losing about a kilo a week. And that means over that sort of 16 weeks, we're losing about 15 to 16 kilos. And that would be a sweet spot for us because I like more of an aggressive approach because people like fast-ish results because that keeps motivation high. And motivation high means we actually stick to the plan. So calories matter most. Start tracking our food. And we need to be going, if it is 2,000 calories, most people will be thinking right now, what does that mean? I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, what does 2,000 calories mean? You're talking in numbers. I talk in food groups. So, you know, what does 2,000 calories mean? Do you want to have it go through a basic 2,000 calorie diet on a daily basis, or would you like me to go through it, Jace?
Well, I mean, I've been eating below 2,000 for so long. I don't know if I could even chuck it up. I'll let you go for it, and I'll chime in.
Yeah, awesome.
I mean,
awesome.
Shit, that's more food than I get.
That's a lot. Yeah, exactly. So I think if we look at it, you know, if you are someone who has, you know, 4 standard meals throughout the day, you could be having, you know, 3 eggs for breakfast with a slice of toast with half a tablespoon of butter. That's going to be approximately about 350 calories. So all of a sudden we're going to get 20 grams of protein with the eggs. We're going to get a little bit of fats, a little bit of carbohydrates. We've got about 350 calories there. At lunchtime, we're on the road. So we're out doing work. You could have Helga's wrap. You could chuck 120 grams of chicken in there. You could chuck some lettuce, some tomato, slice of light, tasty cheese, maybe put some low-fat mayonnaise. That is very low in calories, guys. Don't go the high-fat mayo. Go for the low-fat Praise 99% fat-free mayo. That's going to be about 500 calories there. So all of a sudden, between breakfast and lunch, we're seeing somewhere between 800 to 850 calories. The 120 grams of chicken, we're going to get another above 30 grams of protein in that. Afternoon rolls around. We want to have something because we don't want to go into dinner feeling absolutely starving, so we overeat. You could grab a shake. So you get 100 grams of frozen berries. You could get some almond milk. You get a scoop of whey protein. And again, that'll be about 250 grams to 250 calories to 300 calories. And about 30 grams of protein. So now we're up around the 1150-ish mark or 1100 calorie mark. And then at dinner time, if we're looking at just keeping it simple, you can have, you know, a cup of rice, 125 grams of rice. You could have a 200 gram eye fillet steak or 250 gram eye fillet steak. If you want to go on the steak eye fillet route, depends on where your finances are right now. You can go into the lean mince route as well and chuck a bit of seasoning in there. And it'll be very similar, just the fat content will be a little bit higher. And we can have at least 200 to 300 grams of veg. Okay, so we do want to make sure we have veg because that increases our fiber. And that dinner is going to be about 700 calories. Okay, so we're sitting about 1,800 calories now. Dinner would have another 50 grams of protein. So we're making sure we're having a minimum 30 grams of protein in each of the meals. And we're sitting about 1,800 calories now. After dinner, you could have a small tub of Chobani Fit yogurt or a YoPro yogurt. You could chuck a little bit more frozen berries in that if you like. And that's going to give you that little bit of a sweet taste after dinner. And it'd be about 150 calories. And we came in under the 2,000 calorie mark. and you would have eaten a fair bit of volume for the day, you would have been full, you would have felt great, and we would have hit our protein requirements, we would have hit our calorie requirements, we're inside the calorie deficit, we're, sticking to food, and that's what a 2000 calorie day would look like. Now, again, if you like, what happens? That sounds like you have to cook a lot. So you don't have to. If you're going out for dinner, you can go past Grilled, get a mustard and pickled burger and a Coke Zero. Mustard and pickled burger is like 585 calories. You go past Nando's, get a Supremo wrap, get extra tenderloins. That's going to be about 550 calories. There is places you can eat out quite easily and still sit inside your calories. Okay. You just have to increase that education a little bit and you're going to be fine. And I think for us, that is the key that we want to impart with our clients to help them understand that you can still enjoy the foods you love and still lose weight. If you didn't want to have the yogurt after dinner and you still had that sort of 200 calories up your sleeve, have a beer. The average beer is 120 to 150 calories. Have a beer with dinner or have a glass of wine with dinner. It's 120 calories and you're still inside your calorie deficit. You still hit your protein requirements and you still enjoyed your day. And I think that's what the numbers equal out into food.
I think the biggest issue people have is they cut out so much. They feel like they don't have any choice. So that's one way of relating. Yeah, there's obviously numbers related to food. And if you either use Google, right? Let's say you're having something to eat. How many calories is in this? Or what's the macronutrients, which is breaking down the proteins, carbs, and fats in a food, which is what we want to look at just to make sure we get enough protein in so that we can maintain muscle mass. We're burning more energy while we're eating, all of that good stuff we talked about before. So if you are Googling the food, or if you're just looking on the back of the packet of it, most of it will have the amount of calories per serve, the amount of protein that's in there compared to everything else. And just start reading the back of the labels. Just start checking them out before I remember grabbing a muffin one time from a servo. This is like a while ago. And I saw the back of it and there was like 50 grams of carbs in it. It was like 400 calories and it was bugger all protein in it. It was so dense with other foods. And it was this tiny little muffin. I was like, there's absolutely no way there should be that much calories in that little food. And I knew if I ate that food compared to a cup of rice and a bunch of other stuff that I could stir in, some lean beef mince and all that kind of stuff, for a similar amount of calories, I would end up with a far fuller stomach and I would be a lot happier from a food intake perspective than I would if I had just eaten that little muffin. So when you're making these choices and when you're choosing certain foods, a lot of people are like, oh, there's not very many calories to go on. Well, it's not if you're eating Big Macs and large chips and all these things that are very calorie dense, or you're drinking your calories away with beer. But if you understand the amount of calories that is in each of these foods, if you understand how they operate and how they work, then you can say, all right, well, I've got this many calories stuff. Yeah, I would enjoy a beer. Or you're like, you know what, I'm a little bit hungry, so I'm going to let go of the beer for tonight and I'm going to grab something that might fill me up a little bit more. And that's how you end up being a little bit more consistent with your goals, because you're able to make the choice based on the information you've got. So the reason why people will tend to go for more whole foods is they tend to be more filling. There's more vitamins and minerals and fiber in them, which slows down digestion, all of that good stuff that helps us stay on track. But at the end of the day, it's all about understanding the calorie density of those foods. If you choose low calorie density foods, you can have more of them. You will feel more full, right? If you eat an entire head of lettuce, there's fuck all in that, right? There's nothing in that, as opposed to eating, as I was saying before, like a packet of chips, right? That's going to have a ton more calories. You're going to feel way hungrier after the chips than you will after the lettuce, right? Now, I don't recommend that everyone goes on the only eat lettuce diet, but that is an example of a very low calorie density food, and that we want to focus on including in our diet to bulk out our meals, to give us more fiber, to basically help us stay on track a little bit easier and choose those choices as opposed to feeling forced. Oh, I can't have beer. It's like, well, no, you can, but that might mean you have a bit less rice, or it might mean you have just the chicken and the salad as opposed to having it in a wrap, right? Then you can make those little trade-offs. And then that is where you step into your power, right? You step into your power and your ownership of, I'm in control of my body. I'm in control of my health and my fitness. And that is a very empowering place to be at. Most people are at effect. They're like, oh, the world's happening to me. I don't understand any of this stuff. It's all too hard. It's like, well, it's always going to be too hard unless you start looking, unless you start tracking, unless you start understanding. It's always going to be too hard.
I think that's the biggest thing, mate. Like a lot of people come to us when we help them understand nutrition and start coaching them through this. And you'll get the percentage of people that's like, this is too hard for me. And it's like, they're in a victim mindset, right? They're complaining, they're blaming, they're making excuses. We need to get them to take responsibility and to take accountability. If it's too hard right now, it's always going to be too hard. So what we need to do is we need to simplify. And some people will say, hey, let's just start tracking breakfasts. And we'll start there and we start winning and let's start tracking breakfast and lunches. And then we start tracking breakfast, lunches and dinners. And I think the biggest thing is it's only too hard if you're constantly trying to, have elaborate meals all over the place all the time. When if we look at it, like most people eat like about 23 foods a week. And whether you're eating the 23 wrong foods, which is like over calorie consumption based on your goals, or the 23 foods that you enjoy to eat that are inside your calorie goals, I think that's what we need to look at. So, I always tell my guys, and I always say the same, it's like, pick 2 to 3 breakfasts. You know the calories for these breakfasts. You understand it. We work through it. It's like, okay, you're either going to have like this yogurt and berries and muesli, or you're going to have a shake, or you're going to have like an egg white omelet with some toast and some avocado. Okay, you know these breakfasts. You've got one that's on the go. If you've got one, if you've got more time, like you understand. It's like, okay, now 2 to 3 lunches. Okay, if you're going to meal prep on the weekend, this is your lunch. If you're going to prepare that wrap in the morning, this is your lunch. You know where you work. If you've got this, go-to place for work, if you didn't prepare anything, this is what happens. So now we have like these 3 lunches that sort of hit these 500 calories and they're good to go. That's like, what's your go-to snacks that you enjoy? Okay, let's get about 200-300 calories in the afternoon and let's nail that, whether it be a shake, or whether it be yogurt, or whether it be some beef jerky or whatever it is. And that's like, for me, we have 7 nights of the dinner, 7 dinners across the week. We're quite structured in my house because we just enjoy every night, right? Now we have, some nights we have meatballs, which is Mondays. We have chili on Tuesdays. We have burgers one night. We have pizza one night at home, homemade pizzas. We have spaghetti one night. I know the calories. We have the meals, and every night of the week is a dinner. And when we get sick of one, we just rotate one in and we rotate one out. It's very simple. But because we understand the calories and because we also enjoy the food, we don't find it hard to ever track either. And I think once you have these sort of set meals for at least breakfast, lunch, and snack, the only thing you really ever have to look out for is dinner. It's like, I just have to really track dinner because I know all the rest. I know I have about 700 calories to dinner, for example. I just need to find some meals that fits inside those 700 calories. I think what this does is the overwhelm of calorie tracking becomes simplified because you have a set schedule pre-dinner, and then dinner is really the only thing that you have to understand what you need to do. And I always recommend that if you're not going to have the same dinners each night of the week, as far as like a schedule like me, like on a Sunday, sit down with your partner and at least make a plan for the next week, or at least the next 3 days. So when we're looking at it, we're already pre-committing to different nights of the week for meal. 1, it's going to be cheaper for shopping. 2, there's never going to be a question, what do you want for dinner? And then they go, what do you want? And then you start defaulting into bad behaviors and frustrating situations. And we just, essentially like play through. And we don't have to make those decisions continuously because we've already pre-committed to meals ahead of time. Tracking's easier. We know where we can fit the beers in, or we know where we can fit the extra snack in, or we know how we can fit anything we really want in because we have pre-committed and we've pre-planned what we're going to eat. If you're trying to track on the fly continuously, it's literally trying to manage your budget on the fly. Can I spend this or can I spend it? I don't know. If you don't know your budget, you're not pre-planning how much you should be spending, you're constantly going to be living in a state of anxiety, stress, and frustration. You're probably not going to hit your goals either.
Yeah, you're going to be spending money and you're going to forget, oh shit, my rego just came in the mail the next day. But if you were across your finances, you'd know that one's coming up. It's just same thing if you've got an event out, or you're going out to dinner. I know that I'm not going to have full control of the calories over there. So I'm just going to keep it nice and tight, focus on protein, keep it lean up until that point. And then you can do the whole saving and borrowing process to make sure that whatever you have at dinner isn't going to blow it out. But the biggest thing Trav said there is get your family on board. Make it a group thing. Make it you don't have to have your own sad little grilled chicken and broccoli over in the corner while your family eats all these great meals. Get them on board, and it's surprisingly easy to make a lot of these more unhealthy foods work. There are lean beef, the peppercorn lean beef patties, right? You can get at Woolies. They use for burgers all the time. Double up with those and some low fat cheese, and you can either do it as an open face or even as a full burger. Only ends up being like 500 to 600 calories for the dinner, and you get a good solid amount of protein in there, right? And you can add some other things in there to make it work too. there are ways of making those more, those more unhealthy meals work, but you have to have your family on board. You can't be doing it as like the sad little dad in the corner with his little food. You've got to get them involved as well, because more than likely either their peer pressure will win out on you, be like, oh, come on, let's have this meal with us, stop being healthy and all this kind of stuff, or you'll convince them eventually to come on board, and you can make some kind of compromises and you can make it all work. So I think the reason we spent so much time focusing on calories and protein intake and all this stuff is this is the biggest thing that people struggle with when it comes to achieving a transformation. They struggle with the nutritional intake, because not only do you have 3 or 4 times a day where you can win with your nutrition, you also have 3 or 4 times a day where you can lose. And each of those meals can either be a win or a loss. And so many people, when they have one loss, they throw the entire program out because like, one loss means I'm all done. It's like, let's say you're eating 4 meals a day, right? And you're across 7 days a week, that's 28 meals a week. So one meal is like 3%, 2 to 3% of your entire week. That's not a huge deal, right? Unless you spend 4 hours eating a meal, and then that's a different category. But that is not a loss. But you can let those wins add up. And we talked about it last week, is really tallying up the wins and getting those little wins in each week. You've got the opportunity 3-4 times a day to make that better choice. Just because you make one choice that isn't 100% the best reflection of your best self, that's okay. You've just got to keep moving forward. Most people will just kind of give up on it. So once you nail your nutrition intake, you just start to get that momentum with tracking. And as Trav said, have some pre-programmed meals. I used to not eat breakfast, and every single lunch when I was a tradie, I would get a Subway foot-long chicken strips, double meat, no cheese, hot chili sauce. And that would be about 85 grams of protein. It'd be about 850 calories. I could have 2 of those footlongs in a day and pretty much nail my fat loss, and they would keep me pretty full. So I would just have that consistently day in, day out. So I knew that every single day I would track that for lunch, and it makes it automatically a lot less overwhelming, because then you've got like, I'm only need to track like 700-800 more calories and I'm good to go for the day. So have those staples. Communicate to your partner, communicate to your family unit, say, hey, this is what I'm going to be doing. This is what I need to focus on. It's going to take some time. Yes, it may be a bit of a teething period, but I think this is important for all of us to be on board with. And, if your wife isn't on board, or your partner isn't on board with you wanting to make a better man of yourself and to get fitter and get healthier, maybe you should, maybe you need to go to therapy, have a bigger conversation.
Yeah, I think everyone needs to be supportive, right? I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, I want to be the best version of me. Do you want me to be the best version of me? Because if I feel healthier, I feel more confident. If I feel more confident, I'm less frustrated. I have more energy. I'll have more energy for you. I'll be more patient with the kids. Like, if I have more energy, I'm a better human being. And this is what nutrition is. It's the amount of energy we have on a daily basis. So we can have, poor inputs, which give you poor energy, or we can have great inputs, which give you great energy. And as we decrease body fat and I improve our body composition, all of a sudden our energy starts to increase more and more as well. So I think, it's telling your partner it's important, and it's important to you, and you need their support, because I think having a supportive partner obviously makes it so much easier, and getting them on board, not because they want to lose weight or you're trying to tell them they have to lose weight. Please don't say that to your partner. But tell them that it's important for you. So you just want to start to manage this at least for the next 4 to 8 weeks. By that time, it starts to be routine. We start to win the game. So when we're looking at it, that's essentially some food selection. We do want bigger volume-based food, especially inside a calorie deficit. We do want to make sure that protein is king. Meat, at least about 30 grams of protein inside our meals. You can ask us questions and DM us on Facebook or on Instagram if you want to have more specific understanding around this. But 30 grams of protein is going to give us the protein threshold at least every 4 hours to get optimal protein synthesis, which is helping us with lean muscle gain and fat loss. Protein's the most important macronutrient out of carbs, fats, and protein. Alcohol is a separate one down the bottom here, but protein is primary. Okay, it helps us hold on to muscle mass when we're in a calorie deficit, because if protein's low and we're inside a calorie deficit, we're going to lose more muscle mass. We lose more muscle mass overall, our basal metabolic rate, or our metabolic rate decreases. And also you start off as an apple if you're overweight, and you become a smaller apple. No one wants to be a skinny fat dude. So if you're losing weight, you want to lose not weight, you want to lose fat. So that means making sure that we're eating enough protein. We want to have a minimum about 1.5 to 2 grams of protein per kilo per day. So again, if you're 100 kilos, you want to be eating about 150 grams to 200 grams of protein. If you're having 4 meals a day, you might have 30 grams of protein inside your breakfast, and you have 40 for lunch, 30 in the afternoon, 50 to 60 for dinner, and you're good to go. And you hit your grams of protein, which is the minimum to hold on to that lean muscle mass. Also, protein is highly satiating, so it keeps us fuller for longer. And I think that is key. So we want to be full for as long as possible. And like we said, it helps us hold on to that lean muscle mass. Other than that, carbs and fats tend to vary. For my guys, I just make sure they have a minimum of 20% of their daily intake as fats, just an absolute minimum. And if they want to be slightly higher in the carbs, that's completely fine. If they want to be slightly lower in the carbs and higher in the fats because they enjoy more fatty food, that's also fine. We want to have the minimum fats because that helps our hormones, testosterone, and just our overall hormonal structure work correctly. And I don't like going too low on the carbohydrates because that helps fuel our performance inside the gym, because we train to preserve muscle mass and we diet to lose fat. So I like carbohydrates because it helps us have that energy inside the gym so we can push the heavy weights, we can build that lean muscle mass, and we can truly start to decrease the fat that we're after. And I think that's when we look at the macro breakdown. The thing you did say earlier, Jace, was the borrowing of calories. We can do that on a daily basis. Okay. So let's just say we did have that event at nighttime. We can go lean on the calories earlier in the day, maybe just have 2 protein shakes and dinner. You could just do that if you wanted to, and you had 200 calories during the day and you had like 100 calories for dinner, and you're still inside your daily calorie deficit. Or you can be more strategic and go, well, I know on Saturday I'm going to have more calories because we have a wedding or we have an event, and I'm currently eating 2,000 calories a day as my deficit. And I know on if we look at Saturday, I need to eat 3,000 or maybe 3,500 calories. It's a wedding. You're having a big day. What you can do is you can do what's called calorie cycling. You can decrease the other days of the week by, say, 400 calories. So you have 1,600 calories a day from Monday to Friday. You've just saved 400 calories times 5. So you save 2,000 calories, okay, across the week. You can bang on those 2,000 calories onto the Saturday, have a higher calorie day Saturday, because it's weekly calories that matter most with fat loss, not daily calories. Is my weekly calories, do they still hit 14,000 calories to hit my calorie deficit to achieve my kilo of weight per week loss? Yes, well, then we nailed it. So it's understanding that we can borrow calories throughout the day, or we can cycle calories throughout the week to achieve the weekly goal of our calorie deficit, to achieve our weekly goal of losing weight.
Yeah. So as you can tell, there's obviously a lot in this. There's a lot that you can take from it, even trying to keep it relatively simple. There's so many different aspects that are involved. And then we could look at things like alcohol and the effects that has on our hunger, especially if you're going to be out drinking at a wedding, for example, all day long. It's going to affect you in a couple of ways. Number one, it's going to give you a poor quality of sleep. So you're probably going to wake up feeling hungover. And that's usually why people feel hungover, not necessarily the alcohol and the dehydration, but the lack of sleep or poor quality of sleep. Alcohol does affect your sleep in really, really strong ways. But if you're then drunk, you're probably going to make less good food choices. You're going to get the late night kebab or the pizza or whatever else, and you're just going to say, oh, fuck, who cares, right? It lowers your inhibitions and it lowers your ability to make decisions, to make good decisions, right? So there's so much that gets involved when it comes to the nutritional side of things and achieving a transformation. This is obviously why we do coaching, why we work with guys one-on-one, because it can take a lot of time and a lot of energy to distill all of that information into a practical sense for people. So just consider that if you are being like, oh my God, there's a lot to this. It's like, that's why coaches are there, and that's why they're there, is also for that accountability, right? If you're going to go do this alone and you're trying to sift through all the information and re-listen to things and try and find things, it becomes a bit of a struggle. But if you've got someone there to sort of help you along the journey and remind you of certain things and let you know of situations as they come up, that's obviously the power of accountability in this process. And achieving that transformation doesn't happen without accountability from someone. That's why you get your family on board. That's why you get a coach on board. That's why you get your friends on board. You let people know, this is what I'm trying to do. Hold me accountable. Get me to that result, because there's going to be times where you don't want to do it. And then your wife is going to say, hey, didn't you say you were going to be all shredded for us? Okay, fine. I'm going to go do it. Right. So there's so much to it, and there's so many different aspects to it. Should we touch on training and movement a little bit?
I definitely do think so, mate. And before there's the last thing, I think the biggest thing, guys, don't be overwhelmed from this. It's like we have calories, we have protein. Those are the two key things. Just stay under your calories and hit your protein. Those are the two things I'm telling you to do. And don't worry about your carbs and fats too much. Just do those two things and it will kick off your transformation. I think when we look at it, then moving out of nutrition onto training, we need to be doing some weight training. Okay. We can't just be running our way into fat loss. We'll run our way into weight loss, but we won't run our way into fat loss, because if we're doing high amounts of aerobic training, we'll start to break down more muscle mass. And again, we will become the skinny fat version of us. We need to be doing a fair amount of strength training, and we need to be focusing on actually pushing ourselves inside the gym and doing our full body workouts, because we need to make sure we're hitting our legs with our training sessions as well. So with strength training, what do you recommend, Jace?
I recommend at least 2 to 3 times a week, right? At the very, very minimum, if you're going to be doing full body training, you've got to get in. You've got to do some kind of resistance training. Now, there's plenty of minimum guidelines. If you've been training before in the gym, whatever it is, you need to have at least a minimum of about 4 to 5 sets per muscle group per week. That's like absolute bare minimum. But if you're looking to grow a little bit as well, and for those people who haven't been in the gym before, you've got a really unique opportunity where you can put on some muscle mass while you're losing fat. Right? That's the ideal for most people when they jump in. They want to gain muscle, right? That's what's going to give us the shape and the lines and the abs and all that kind of stuff. That's what's going to stretch the skin tight after we lose the body fat. That's what most people are looking for. Not only that, but having muscle mass is, very good from a longevity perspective, from living longer, not falling over when you get to 80 years old, right? You can stay upright and you're not going to fall down, break your hip, and you can't get up off the floor, right? All of that stuff is why it's important. But at least 2 to 3 times a week, full body strength training, ideally 4 to 5, right? Once you scale up to that point, you don't have to go 7 days a week from the very beginning. And there's a bunch of different sort of splits and stuff you can do. But if you are completely brand new, 2 to 3 times a week, go in the gym, smash every body part, right? Do mainly compound movements. You're doing things like, squats and leg press, right? Make sure if you don't know how to do them under supervision, look up how to do them properly. Same thing with deadlifts, bench press, all that kind of stuff. Make sure you're doing it right. But you're doing multi-joint compound movements. You're not sitting there doing bicep curls, right? That doesn't really count. You want to do multi-joint movements. You want to be doing presses, overhead presses. You want to be doing leg presses, squats, lunges. You're going to be doing rows. You're going to be doing all of that kind of stuff that uses a bunch of different muscle groups. And you're going to try and hit every single muscle group in every one of those sessions 3 times a week. That's like, if you get nothing else from this, go to the gym 3 times a week. Even if you do the exact same session in there 3 times a week,
that's fine,
right? That's perfectly fine. And you're going to get a bit of a taste for it eventually. Then when you start to be like, hey, you know what? I'm recovering well from these sessions. I'm feeling good, because initially you're going to be sore as hell, right? That's normal. It's going to take a week or 2 for you to start to get into the groove. But then once you do, you're going to notice, oh, you know what? I'm feeling all right. Then you can maybe bump it up to 4 sessions a week. And then you can start looking at, hey, I'll do what we call an upper lower split. You might do upper body, then lower body, upper body, then lower body. And that way you give your muscles time to recover. But minimum 2 to 3 times a week in the gym, pushing weight, tracking the weight, and pushing yourself a little bit further each week until you can't push yourself any further, right? Then that's when you usually know you're in a really good calorie deficit, when you can't bump up the weights anymore. But if you focus on your full body, you focus on 2 to 3 times a week, just getting in there, getting some movement in, right? Some dads, right, are going to have a different schedule where they'll only be able to train for like half an hour, and then you can do more frequent sessions, right? So just think about what is your context, what is in the realm of your possibilities, what can you do and make work in your situation. But resistance training is king for longevity, for health, for muscle mass, for fat loss, all of that kind of stuff. So that is if you're going to prioritize any movement, that's the movement that you prioritize.
Mate, I completely agree. I think the key thing with this as well, if you're going to the gym and you're lifting weights, like, power to you. I'm not going to say, hey, you're doing it wrong, but I want you to make sure it's effective as well. Okay. So there's no point going into the gym and lifting 2 kilo dumbbells for 12 reps if you could lift those 2 kilo dumbbells for 112 reps. You need to be lifting at a stimulus that's actually also going to facilitate change. So when we're looking at gaining lean muscle mass, and we always train essentially most of the time in a body transformation setting to gain lean muscle mass, whether in a deficit or whether in a surplus, we want to be trying to push ourselves to retain muscle or gain muscle at the end of the day. So that is always within 1 to 2 reps in reserve. So if it doesn't matter if it says 8 reps, then you lift a weight that you could lift for up to 10 reps. At the 11th rep, you collapse. If it says 15 reps, you want to lift a weight that you could lift to 16 to 17 reps. You try and hit 18 reps, you collapse. And then people will be like, oh, whereabouts when looking at trying to gain lean muscle mass, isn't that 8 to 12 reps? I was like, no, you can gain muscle mass at 6, you can gain it at 12, you can gain it at 30 reps. The only problem is if you're going a program that's primarily strength based and you're constantly hammering 4 to 6 reps, your nervous system's going to fatigue. You're going to start to feel fried mentally, and it's not going to give you the longevity in the program you're after. If you're constantly trying to hit 2 reps from failure at 30 reps, the sessions are going to be nauseous. You're not going to want to to do them. And if you're doing 30 reps on the leg press at like a 2 reps in reserve every time you walk in there, you're not going to want to go back. You're going to absolutely hate training. It is. It's basically cardio. So normally when we're looking at that sort of 10 to sort of 15 rep range is the sweet spot. Right? It's not too far on the nervous system training. It's not too far on the nauseation train either. So when we're looking at it, that's when we sort of sit inside that rep range. And we want to lift within that sort of 1 to 2 reps in reserve. And that's the perfect sweet spot as far as lifting a weight that's going to stimulate that change we're after. And as Jay said before, we want to create that progressive overload if we can each week. What that means is increasing the volume of the training session. So there's the amount of reps you do, there's the amount of sets you do, and there's the amount of weight you lift. And the sets times the reps times the weight equals the volume for the session. Now, if you increased 1 rep on all your lifts for the workout, your volume would increase. We can do that each week and your total volume increases, and we're increasing your volume. We're creating a progressive overload. We can also increase the weight and keep the reps the same, or you could drop another set in if you can't increase the weight or the reps. And either way, we can increase the volume across a program of 4 to 6 weeks to get that progressive overload, to continue to simulate that lean muscle mass and stimulate the response we're looking for with our training, which is going to help us gain or at least retain muscle mass with our training program. The key factor here is if you're training for 3 times, 45 minutes a week and sitting on your ass for the rest of the week, it's not going to make the difference. Okay. You can't just think, oh, I trained 3 times 45 minutes and I'm not losing the fat. Well, you sat on your ass for 23 hours and 15 minutes. Okay. Like it doesn't work. You actually have to do more than just go to the gym for 45 minutes. We have to do more. We have to move more. Whereas that's where that sort of neat activity comes in. If you want to touch on that, Jace?
Yeah, so NEAT is a big one when it comes to losing fat. And as Trav said before, it's actually a bigger chunk of our overall daily expenditure than the exercise activity is. Even if we go in with all this intensity and we're training really hard and we're doing all this stuff, that's still not going to be as effective as the other 23 hours and 15 minutes, because a low level of intensity of even any movement during that period of time is going to add up to way more than anything you could do in 45 minutes. So you've got to consider, how can I inherently get my active movement up during the day? I've got a ring. It's an Aura ring. It's basically like a sleep and movement tracker. And every hour, if I've been sitting down, if I've been not moving for more than an hour, it passive aggressively messages me and says, time to stretch your legs a bit, time to get up. And I'm like, first of all, I'm like a little bit pissed off at it. Then I'm like, all right, no, cool. I'll get up. I'll go to the bathroom. I'll do a walk around the house. I'll get my steps up. And you can do it bit by bit throughout the day. And, every half an hour you're getting up and you're doing like a 1-minute walk. I was listening to another podcast where they talked about exercise snacks, where you just break up any movement with just a snack of exercise. You go run up and down the stairs one time and then go back. And those little movements over time will add up. Things like parking further away at the shops, or, catching a form of public transportation in, or even going on a 15-minute walk at the start of the day and a 15-minute walk at the end of the day. Those little things, because you're doing them so consistently, because the dose is so high, they're going to add up over time, and they're going to add up over the 7 days much more than any training session will. So your goal is to unconsciously increase your little ways of movement. It doesn't always have to be, all right, I'm going on a 60-minute walk as of right now. It can just be, hey, in the morning we might do a little bit of a stretch, or I'm going to make more of an effort to water the lawn and mow the lawn in the mornings, or do whatever gardening that needs doing around the house. Those things are also considered NEAT. It's non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So think about, do more housework. That'll keep your wife happy, and that'll get your NEAT up as well. But plan it into your days. If you're sedentary for more than an hour at a time, have a built-in way that you're going to get up and you're going to break that, because that momentum could carry you through to the rest of the day. And then all of a sudden it's 2 p.m. and you've done 300 steps, right? Before this podcast, I knew we had this podcast coming up. I was going to be sitting down for about an hour. So I went for a couple of laps around the block, get some movement in. I went and watered the lawn, made sure I did a few things to keep the activity up, because this was going to be a bit of a sedentary point of my day. So have those built-in ways that you can get your steps up, that you can get just general activity in. Doesn't have to be focused on just walking somewhere, but think about the ways that you can increase that, either by parking further away, catching public transport, or be your household hero and vacuum and mop the floor every day. Oh, no, floor needs another vacuum. You just need your steps up. No, I'm good.
I think that's key. It's having the number. It's like having a activity tracker with your watch allows you, again, if you are conscious of it, you start to do it more often. I think that's a key thing. You know, when people think, oh, do I have to hit this 10,000 steps a day? And it's like, no, you don't have to hit 10,000 steps a day. You need to be looking at what I like to say is a minimum 8,000 steps a day for all of my people. And that puts us out of that sedentary lifestyle. So 8,000 steps a day is a goal. If we're an office worker, the average office worker does 4,000 to 5,000 steps a day. So you'd need to hit an extra 4,000 steps. Now, if you're walking just on an average brisk pace, you're going to get about 6,000 steps in an hour. So that means you need to be walking for about 45 minutes outside of your daily activity to hit that. So it could be go for a 15-minute walk in the morning. That means you're going to hit at least about 1,500 steps. You go for a 15-minute walk at lunchtime. You go for a 15-minute walk at night with your partner or with your kids. All of a sudden, you hit the extra 4,500 steps. We increase our total daily steps. We hit our minimum threshold of 8,000 steps a day. And all of a sudden, we move out of sedentary into that mildly active, and we're, moving forward with our fat loss results. And that's how I would break it down. Don't just think, oh, I've got to walk 45 minutes every single day. Now it's like, no, break it up to easy, small tasks that are achievable throughout your day.
Yeah, 100%. It's big Herculean efforts of like, oh, I've left it all to the end of the day. It's the same thing with tracking food, right? People leave it to the end of the day. They're like, oh, I've got to try and remember what I had for breakfast. And then they just put it all in too hard basket. Same thing when it comes to this movement. Just do it little bit by little bit. It's not about completely overhauling everything and walking everywhere and never driving your car again, but just those little things that you can do to increase your steps. Going for a walk with the family is a huge one, right? Usually the families are pretty keen to go on a walk, especially in good weather. Want to go outside, get get some fresh air, all of that stuff has huge benefits. And as Trav was saying, it's going to move your fat loss along. If you don't have something like these steps built in, if you don't have a way of increasing your general daily activity, guess what? You're going to have to eat less to achieve the same result. And I know for most people, they would rather eat the food and be able to eat more food and go on a couple of 15-minute walks rather than have to be on like 18 or 1,600 calories based on where they're at in order to create the deficit they want, because then you're just left hungry. So when in doubt, increasing activity is usually a better way for you to move fat loss along, for you to move your body along in the direction that you want, as opposed to cutting calories if you can help it. If you're already moving way too much and cutting calories is the last thing you have to do, go for it. But don't do that before you can just say, hey, maybe I can eke a little bit more steps out. Maybe I've just been a little bit too lazy. And that fit dad lifestyle is what we're trying to create. We're trying to create a lifestyle of general well-being and fitness. And that person doesn't just train 3 or 4 times a week and sit on the couch. No, they're generally active throughout the day. That's what we're trying to promote and create.
100%, mate. And I think there is other factors at play, and we'll cover a full stress and sleep podcast. But when we look at it today, these are the big factors that, or the key movers or the key levers that help you achieve the transformation we're after. It's like calories matter most. So we need to be understanding how many calories you're eating. That naive working out of it is 11 calories. When we're looking at it, it's like body weight in pounds times 11. That will give you a bit of an estimation to start with. Are you losing 1% of total body weight per week? If not, decrease by 5%, and that will start to get you into a calorie deficit. We want to eat 1.5 to 2 grams of protein per kilo. You want to go towards more of a flexible dieting approach, eating 300 grams of veg per day. You don't have to eat 6 meals a day. You don't have to eat 3 meals a day. You can eat 4 meals a day. You can eat 3. You can eat 6, whatever fits into your lifestyle. Not one makes you lose more fat or burn more fat. It's understanding that. That's key. Understand you can have a beer, but don't have 6 beers a day every single day, or that will 100% inhibit your fat loss. You want to make sure that carbs and protein, carbs and fats can be variant based on your needs and how you do it. You can borrow calories from earlier in the day to later in the day, or you can calorie cycle your calories from one day, a little bit less, a couple of days a week, to higher calories in the week. And you can do that as well. We can make sure we're having higher food volume based calories. So instead of eating a croissant, which is very low satiating and very calorie dense, we're looking at potatoes and pumpkin and vegetables, or leaner proteins like chickens and white fish. That will, 1, increase our satiation, so we're going to stay fuller for longer. 2, they're higher volume, so we actually, they take up more room in our stomach, so we stay fuller for longer as well. And we want to make sure we're doing strength training at least, 2 to 3 times a week. If you're brand new, full body workouts, try and lift 2 reps in reserve. As you start start to advance, go to full workouts, go into an upper or lower split if you want. You can't just train and not do anything else and expect yourself to lose weight. You want to make sure that you are moving as a fit dad. So going for a minimum 8,000 steps a week and get your family involved and making sure that we start to prepare a week ahead in advance, having those conversations with our partner. These are my breakfasts. These are my lunches. These are my snacks. We don't even have to think about it. And having that conversation, what are our dinners for the week, and like planning ahead of time. And that's the biggest factors as far as setting up yourself for success. Is there anything I just missed out there, Jace?
No, pretty spot on. My only thing I'd add is make sure you drink more water as well. 2 to 3
Yeah,
liters.
100%. Yeah. 100%. Drink some water because we need it. We need the water. And don't drink liquid calories all day long. And we will go through this, guys. We want to try and keep most of our podcasts around that sort of 60 minutes. So it's a brief wrap up there, but we will go into other factors in the next podcast. But next week, we're going to talk about habits and systems to actually involve and how to execute all of these. So that's going to be fantastic. If you want individual coaching help, you can go to fit-dad.club and you can book in. We can have a bit of a chat, see where you're at and see where you want to go. So that's fit-dad.club. And, we'll have a chat, help you understand what it takes to transform your body and your life. That is it. Travis Jones. I am out. And Jason, you want to say goodbye?
See you later, everyone. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating and review as well. If you enjoyed the podcast, it helps us out, helps us reach more dads, and that's what we're trying to do. So if you know any dads that could use a bit more of this fitness information, that are looking to make this transformation, just refer them on. And looking forward to seeing y'all on the next show.